Hi, this is Valerie Hector. Welcome to my Frieda Bead video course. I want to tell you a little bit about this structure. I found this example, the only example that looks like this, in China, in the city of Wenzhou many years ago, and I brought it home. It didn't cost much, maybe, I can't remember, 50 cents or $1. Thought, I've got to learn how to make this structure. So it didn't take me too long once I got home to figure out that it's none other than a bead polyhedron, the very same one that Laura Shea published in my book. My book is called The Art of Beadwork. It's from 2005. And Laura recognized this as I think a truncated icosododecahedron or some geometric structure like that. Anyway, the point is that where you see black beads in this structure here is where the teardrops appear in this structure here. So it's very logical and very straightforward once you understand how to make it, okay? So after I figured that out, I went on to make, large ones using 4mm Czech fire polish beads, along with 6x9 Czech oval, teardrops, and 3mm Czech fire polish beads with 4x6 Czech teardrops, and tiniest of all, Japanese size 11 seed beads, because they have good holes, large holes, along with 4x6 teardrops. Anyway, I kept going. You can make earrings. You can make all kinds of very cool things, jewelry, beaded beads to use in necklaces. You could probably figure out how to make a ring, how to make a brooch, whatever. Anyway, so in these videos, I teach you how to make a Frida beaded bead. It is not an easy structure to learn unless you're patient and you follow my directions very closely and patiently. If you follow them closely and patiently, you'll get this structure very quickly. I know people who've never done beading before in their lives, never done complex beading, not even peyote stitch. I have a student who, never having done peyote stitch, made a complete Frida bead within about 3 hours on her first go round. Later, she went on to make one within 45 minutes. Okay, so it can be done. It's not that hard. Now, in the videos, when you hear me say, oh, look, you can look at the instructions, or in the instructions on page whatever, you will see this. Where you get the instructions is you go to my website, valeriehector.com, look under patterns, and download for free the Frieda Bead patterns or instructions, okay? And you can print them out or not print them out, whatever. They help you, they help orient you as you go through the videos, but you don't have to look at them, okay? The other thing is I'm no longer selling kits. If you hear me mention kits in these videos, I stopped doing the kits because I really prefer doing these videos, and they're easier. And I just like videos. I like the format better, okay? If you like what I'm doing in these videos, please subscribe. And if you're in the mood, leave a comment or ask a question. I answer most comments and questions within a day or two, okay? So welcome, have fun, and I'm here if you need me. Send me a comment or a question, okay? I'll see you in the next video. Basic principles. These are shown on page 4 of the instructions. The Frida bead consists of 90 beads only. It's a combination of round beads here, represented by yellow fire polish, which are actually more like oval, and teardrops, like here. These are 4mm by 6mm Czech teardrops. Other sizes of teardrops will work too. Now, rings of 5 beads always will be made of round beads or slightly oval beads, without exception. Rings of 6 beads will always be made of a combination of round beads and teardrop beads. They'll always be spaced apart like that. Round beads are allowed to sit next to each other and to touch each other directly. Teardrop beads are not allowed to touch each other directly. okay? They have to be spaced apart, as I think I just mentioned, by a round bead, always. So if you see a ring of 5 beads, you know it has to be made of round. And a ring of 6 beads, it has to be made of a combination of 3 teardrop and 3 round, okay? Now it makes a difference in terms of the appearance of your Frieda bead, whether you use 3mm fire polish or some larger bead, or you use a seed bead. The teardrops are so much denser here in a structure that involves seed beads than they are in a structure that involves larger beads. The teardrops are spaced much further apart. Same exact structure, really a completely different appearance, okay? Now your teardrop beads have got to have holes running across the tops, as far as I know, okay? Teardrops with holes that run north and south will not work for this structure that I know of. But I encourage you to do some tests. Don't take my word for it. Play around with this structure and see what else it can do. You know, what if you used, I'm just guessing, you know, those small Czech O beads, O-ring beads, or I don't know what they're called, instead of teardrops? It's an experiment I've been meaning to do, but I haven't done it yet. What if you used Japanese magatama beads instead of these Czech teardrop beads? What would happen? So I encourage you to experiment as much as you'd like to, because you'll learn things that are not yet known about this structure. I think we have a lot to learn about this structure, and I encourage you to be the first to develop a new variation. So that's it for basic principles. Beads that will work and the Frida sizes they produce. As I'm sure you realize already, in order for a Frida to work, for its structure to come out looking good, the beads have to be proportional to one another. So the teardrops have got to be in a certain proportion to the round beads. When you're testing, you know, other teardrops and rounds you'd like to use, you just really have to make some to find out if they're going to work, right? If they're not of the sizes that I'm suggesting here. I think many other sizes and combinations will work, but they have to be tested, okay? Shannon and I both suggest that you avoid using Czech 2mm fire polish beads as your round beads because they break when they're reinforced. But other round beads will probably work just fine. Now this is the smallest Frida that I've made so far. It's incredibly lightweight, perfect for earrings. The earrings I offer so far in the Frida style are made in this incredibly lightweight combination of 11/0 seed beads and 4x6 teardrops. Beautiful, perfect for earrings. However, if you want to string this on a neck wire, it's going to be hard because the holes in the rings of 5 beads are just so tiny. You can string it on, you know, tiger tail or something if you want to incorporate it into a necklace, or you can add a bail, like a metal bail here, or some other kind of loop, a loop of seed beads, like, you know, 11/0 seed beads to make it hang, right? But other than that, it's hard to use on a neck wire. This is the medium size that I've made so far. It consists of 3mm Czech teardrops and 3mm Czech fire polish beads and 4x6 teardrops. Now, I feel it's a little bit heavy for an earring, but you can do it if you, if you don't mind a little bit of weight. I've made these as earrings, but I haven't worn them yet. And I guess I'd want to know, you know, can I wear them for how many hours? The other thing is these are beautiful to wear just on a neck wire, okay? Because the holes in the rings of 5 beads are large enough to string on a neck wire. You can combine this element with other beaded elements that you've made, or beads, you know, you've bought from somewhere, like, I don't know, from the bead store, or something interesting, metal beads, like Middle Eastern metal beads. These combine beautifully, but too heavy for an earring, I think. This is the largest size of Frida that I've made so far. It consists of 4mm Czech. I think those are fire polish. I think they are, in a Picasso finish, combined with 6x9 teardrops. Okay, these are heavy. Almost no way you could wear it as an earring unless your lobes are made of steel. However, it's a beautiful necklace element, slides right onto a neck wire, to most neck wires, you know, I mean, regular size neck wires. And obviously you can also incorporate it into one of your beaded necklaces just beautifully. So those are the bead size, the beads that will work that I've discovered so far. I wouldn't want to limit you. I would encourage you, seek out your own beads, do tests, come up with amazing variations that will impress us all. Tips for making a Frida without tears. Now, the Frieda bead can be confusing to learn at first because you keep forgetting which ring you're on. You probably know which row you're on, but which ring, it gets extremely confusing, especially in rows 4 and 5, okay? So my solution for that is lay out the beads for each row before you begin to work. So here, row 1 just has 5 round beads. Row 2 has 10 rounds and 10 teardrops, etc. The math for this is laid out on page 8. I highly recommend you do this, not just while you're learning actually, but even later as you're practicing and getting better. In the end, you may not need to do this if you've made enough Friedas, but right now, on occasion, even I still do it. And I've made many Friedas. You want to pull fairly tightly after you've added each ring of beads, but not too tightly, don't yank. This is a fragile structure, especially at first. Now, it happens sometimes that you get a bead that has sharp edges, and it will split the thread, and if it does that, well, you have to add a new thread, okay? So just pull gently. Don't let the thread get caught around teardrops. Thread is going to want to catch like this, right, around your teardrops. And that's okay, but very often you may not notice it until a much later step, and then it's really hard to deal with. If you notice it at a much later step, you can probably reinforce a little bit around that bead and snip the thread. That's my best suggestion there. Make sure all of your teardrops point in the same direction. See, the rounded ends of the teardrops have to face the outside of the structure. You will notice that sometimes they want to slip under. They want to face the inside of the structure. And that's just not going to do. That ruins everything. It ruins the effect, right? So be on the lookout for that. Keep encouraging your teardrops to face the outside of the structure as you work. Another thing that helps me as I was learning to make this structure is to announce each ring as I make it. So I'll say, if I'm here, I'll say, okay, row 3, ring 3, row 3, ring 4, row 3, ring 5. And somehow announcing it makes me less likely to forget which ring I'm on. What else? I suggest that you reinforce after the structure is finished. Okay, don't reinforce too much beforehand. Once around each ring beforehand is okay while you're making it if you want to, but I'd save the majority of your reinforcing for the end. And I also suggest that the first time you make a Frida, you give it your undivided attention, okay? No TV, no distractions, no cell phone calls, no text messages. Maybe turn off your devices and just focus on this, okay, the first time, because this structure wants your undivided attention. In the diagrams for making the Frida, you'll see little white dots in certain beads, and the dots tell you that those beads are active for a certain step. Okay, so look for the little white dots. Be aware that sometimes Czech teardrops, especially the 4mm by 6mm size we use here for the earrings, and some Frida pendants, sometimes their holes are a little bit small. Sometimes they're sharp and they want to cut the thread. So, maybe look them over once, eyeball them once before you add them to make sure their holes are looking ample. What else here? Now we're going to see as we go along what happens when a certain bead is too full of thread. And this is most likely to happen towards the later stages. If a bead the bead's hole is clogged with thread and we can't go through it, we have a couple of options. And we're going to encounter those as we make a Frida together here. There are options for dealing with that. In fact, there are actually probably 3 options, but you'll see. And this spelled out, 2 of them are spelled out in tip 10 on page 9, but we'll see them as we go. All right, so some basic tips for getting started. Rows 1 and 2. Now, row 1 is made of 5 round beads. That's it. It's the easiest row in the structure. Row 2 is made of rings of 6 beads, only rings of 6 beads. And that's easy too. It's easy because we can always orient ourselves by creating rings of 6 beads. Now, as we said earlier, rings of 6 beads always have 3 teardrops spaced by 3 rounds. Okay, it becomes really easy to remember what we're creating. Now, I've laid out the beads according to each ring here. Okay, here's ring 1 of row 2, ring 2, ring 3, ring 4, ring 5. You'll see there's a progression. Ring 1 wants us to add 5 beads. Ring 2, ring 3, and ring 4, we only have to add 4 beads each. And ring 5, we only add 3 beads. And that's the case with a lot of these polyhedron structures, these spherical and other structures rendered in beads. So I'm using a size 12 needle and a double length of Coates and Clark's hand quilting thread. And you can use 1G, you can use any thread that you like. Most threads will work just fine. I've chosen black to create this sample. In this, for these other samples here, I used red thread. There's a slight difference you'll notice in brightness. Red thread tends to give you a somewhat brighter structure than a dark thread like black will do. That's just, but you already know that, right? Now in the diagrams, I taught you to stitch row 1, ring 1 with a knot, to create a knot. And that's fine getting started. The tail thread sort of orients you when you're just learning this structure for a little while anyway. As you go on, you may not want to install a knot. You can just loop around, keep looping around ring 1 until the thread catches. Now I'm navigating through a few beads here. I like to navigate through 3 beads to get into position to build row 2. You could also just navigate through 1 or 2 or anything, okay? And the tail thread sort of helps us situate ourselves here. Now, if we're creating rings of 6 that have red beads spaced by yellow beads, and if we're coming out of a yellow bead, then we know that we want to add a red bead, a teardrop, okay? And then a yellow, meaning a round, and then a teardrop, and then a yellow, and then a teardrop, okay? Slide them down, okay? And I want to teach you the game of ask the beads what to do, okay? So the beads never lie. They help us. They want us to succeed. If we're forming a ring of 6 and we know that 5 beads are already in place, and we know that after a teardrop comes around, well, then there's only one bead to go through, and that's this bead here. So we go through that bead. Okay, and so we pull a little, not too hard, and so ring 1 of row 2 is in place. Now we have to create a base for adding ring 2. So let's go through this bead here. Okay. Great. So we know that ring 2 only takes 4 beads. We're coming out of a round bead, so we really can only add a teardrop bead first. And then a round, and then a teardrop, and then a round. So I want to teach you the intuitive way to make this structure, so that you don't always have to rely on the diagrams and the math and the numbers, that you can do it just by applying the principles that you're learning, okay? So we know that we're creating a ring of 6 beads, right? And 4 are already in place. 2 good-looking ones are down here. If we have a yellow here, we can only go through a teardrop, right? So it's getting easier, I hope, to understand how this structure works. All right, by playing Ask the Beads. Okay, so we have to get into place to build ring 3. Let's do it by going through this round bead here, trying not to catch the tail. Okay, so now we're in place. And I feel like ring 1 is kind of loose now, so how I would fix that is I would tug a little bit on row 2, make row 2 be more loose, and then pull on the thread here, okay? So that's fine, but now the first ring of 5 is a little bit loose, and you know, that's okay. Row 1 is loose. It's all right, we'll fix that later. Now we're on to ring 3 of row 2, and we're coming out of a yellow. Therefore, we can only add a red teardrop and a yellow round and a red teardrop and a yellow round. That's it. Okay. Once again, position the beads. Play Ask the Beads. 4 are already in place. We know we're creating a ring of 6. So we have to involve this one. It's already involved as the base, and we're going to involve this one too. If this is yellow, a yellow round, we can only go through this red teardrop here. So let's do that. And then we'll go through this yellow too. So we're creating our 3rd ring of 6 beads. And here we are. Now we have to get into position to add the next ring. So we do that by going through this bead here. And this is when possibly the knot might want to get in our way. Oh, it's not. Okay, that's nice. All right. And very soon now, when I finish row 2, I'll probably just snip the tail. Okay. So here we are. We're adding ring 4. These are the beads laid out for ring 4 here. Oops. So we know that if we're coming out of a yellow, we can only really add a red. And then a yellow round, and a red teardrop, and a yellow round. Slide them down. And by now you already know that because the last bead you added is a round, a yellow, and you need to go through a teardrop, that this is the bead you're going to go through. And we go through the yellow, the round, and soon ring 4 will be in place. Okay. Now, we need to get into place to add ring 5. So we're going to navigate through this yellow round bead and this red teardrop bead. So we know that ring 5 has only 3 more beads left to add. So we know we're coming out of a red teardrop, so let's add a yellow round and a red teardrop and a yellow round. Okay, slide them down. We don't even need to ask the beads now. We know that if we're forming a ring of 6, we got 3 here, we got 3 here, the only bead we could go through is this teardrop here. Okay, and that's how it looks now. To get into position, to begin row 3, we want to go through this bead here. Okay, and that's it. Row 2 is done. None of our teardrops are facing underneath the structure. We've got them all on top. It's looking good. And we're ready to add row 3. Row 3. Now we remember that row 1 had just 1 ring of 5 beads. Row 2 had just 5 rings of 6 beads. Well, row 3 alternates. It has 10 rings altogether, and it alternates between rings of 5 and rings of 6 all the way around. It's really pretty easy to get started. I have, again, laid out the beads that are involved in each ring. With ring 1, ring 2, ring 3, ring 4, ring 5, ring 6, ring 7, ring 8, ring 9, ring 10. This makes it a lot easier, okay? Now we're already in position to form the first ring in row 3, which consists of 5 beads. So let's go ahead and add these beads here. And we can only go through a yellow bead here, a round bead, because we know this is a ring of 5 beads, 5 round beads. All right, now to get into position, to add the second ring, we're going to go through this teardrop bead here. It seems kind of counterintuitive the way this row works, but remember, it's an expanding row. It expands the diameter of the sphere, and that's why we're adding 10 rings instead of like 5. Okay, now we know that we're going to build a ring of 6 beads here, and already 2 are in place. This one, this yellow one, and this red one here. So we know that we should start with a yellow, meaning a round bead, add a teardrop, add a yellow, add a teardrop, and then let's lay them out, and then we can play ask the beads. Now if this is a teardrop bead here, it has to go next to a yellow, right? It has to go next to a round bead. If we added this one, if we went through this bead, our ring would have 7 beads in it. We don't want that. So we know the only one we can really go through is this one here. And then of course we go through the teardrop because it participates in ring 3 too. And there we go. Ring 3 is in place. All right, now in ring 4, we're going to add 2 beads to form a ring of 5 round beads. So first we have to go through these guys here, okay? And can you see that now 3 round beads are in place for this ring? So let's add the 2 that remain. And then we're going to go through these 3 beads again and pull. And to get into position for the next row, we're going to go through that teardrop bead there. Okay, Now we know that this row, excuse me, this ring, which is ring, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This is ring 4. We're going to have to start with the yellow bead because we're coming out of a teardrop bead. So let's add 1 yellow, 1 teardrop, one yellow, excuse me, 1 teardrop. Again, I would situate the beads down here, and we already know, because we just did this, that we should go through this bead here to form our ring of 6. So let's do that. Okay, and so that is ring 4 in place. Now we're just going to work our way around row 3 doing the same thing, building rings of 5 and rings of 6. Okay, now this is a ring of 5. Already 3 beads are in place, so we know that we just have to add 2 beads, 2 round beads. Great. And our beads are already set out for us here. We don't even need to play Ask the Beads. We already know what to do. We're creating a ring of 5 beads. Okay, we know we have to go through this teardrop because it gets us into position to add the next ring. Beautiful. Well, what is this bead doing here? Oh, it fell from here. Okay, so we're coming out of a red teardrop. We know we have to add a yellow round. Okay, so around a teardrop, around a teardrop, slide the beads down, and now we're experts. We know that we're going to go through this bead right here to create our ring of 6. Done. Okay, now the next one is a ring of 5 round beads. 3 are in place. We're going to add 2, but we got to get into position to add 2 by making a solid base of the 3 round that are in place. So let's add our 2, and then let's go through this yellow, this round bead here, back through the other guys, and then back through the teardrop. All right, so that ring is in place. And now the next ring, that was a ring of 5 yellow beads, so this has to be a ring of 6 beads alternating red and yellow. We're coming out of a teardrop, therefore we know we go through a yellow and a teardrop, yellow, teardrop. Here we are. We already know from experience that we're going to go through this bead here to create our ring of 6. Okay. We're really making progress. We can start going pretty quickly because we know what we're doing and we've taken the hard part out. All right, now our next ring is a ring of 5 beads. We're going to be adding 2 yellow, 2 round. Go through these here. Good. All right, so this last ring is kind of tricky, I admit. One thing that's going to help you in the first place, look, this teardrop is going under there. What's really going to help is noticing that there's a pattern. We're building a pattern here. There are 2 red teardrop beads here with 1 yellow in the middle, 2 red with 1 yellow, 2 red with 1 yellow, 2 red with 1 yellow. Therefore, that must be, there are only 4, and we want to have 5. So we know that that's what we're going to do here somewhere. We're going to build a teardrop, a round, and a teardrop. Now, what's the most likely place to do this? Well, It's to build it from here and here, okay, to end up there. Do you see how it really makes a lot of sense where these beads have to be added? So if you're not sure, again, play Ask the Beads. So we're going to go through this teardrop and this round, and we're going to add one teardrop because we're coming out of a round. Add a teardrop, add a round, add a teardrop, go through a round. Okay, so that's our row 3. Now it's a little loose here. We could tighten it up. Try to tighten it up now, or wait till later, and when we're reinforcing, tighten it up. We could do a little, I think we can do a little tightening now. A little. But it will tighten up as we reinforce, okay? So that's row 3. And we want to get into position now to add row 4. So what should we do? We're going to go through these 2 beads right here, okay? There we go. Row 4. Row 4, like row 3, has 10 rings that alternate between rings of 5 round beads and rings of 6 beads alternating round and teardrop, okay? Ring 4 creates a kind of a decreasing effect in your Frida because it has a different configuration of beads than row 3 did. One thing you want to make sure is correct before you start out on row 4, which I didn't used to do. You must always check that above the teardrop you're coming out of, above actually the teardrop you're coming out of and the teardrop just below it, above them is a ring of 5 beads, okay? Otherwise, you could also be working from this pair of teardrops too, in which case you're working near a ring of 6 beads here and 6 beads here, and that's wrong. If you want to build 4 correctly, check to be sure that this ring of 5 beads is in place before you add ring 1. Now, ring 1 has 6 beads in it. Already 3 are in place. This teardrop, this round, and this teardrop. If we're coming out of a teardrop, we know we start by adding a round, okay? And then a teardrop, and then a round. To create a ring of 6, we don't have too many options. We've got 3 beads on here. And so if this last one is a round bead, then for sure we want to go through this teardrop here. And that will give us a perfect ring of 6. Okay, so let's do that. And that's our ring of 6. Okay, now we know our next ring is a ring of 5 round beads. To give it a firm base, we go through that round bead there. Okay, now we have set out for us 3 round beads, which must mean that 2 of the round beads are already in place, and they are. And so to create a ring of 5, we only have one option, and that's to go through this bead right here. Okay, so we pull, and there we are. Now to get into position to form ring 3, you'd think you might go through just this teardrop and build from there, but that's not correct. We have to skip across the structure somewhat to navigate through to the next teardrop, Why is that? Because we want to form our rings of 6 right below a ring of 5. Okay, so here we are in position. There are only 2 beads to add in this ring, a round and a teardrop. We know it's a ring of 6, so if we play Ask the Beads, you know, you can kind of put them into position here. You can say, should I go through this one? No, that's a ring of 7. Should I go through this one? Yeah, that's a ring of 6. So let's form our ring of 6. Okay, go through the teardrop we first came out of to complete the ring. Beautiful. Now, we're not going to skip to add this ring of 5 beads. We're just going right next door, giving this ring a secure base by going through this bead, and then adding 3 beads. Okay. Now, we don't really even have to play Ask the Beads here. It's just kind of obvious that to create a ring of 5, we're going through this bead here, and this bead here, and there we go. Our ring of 5 is built, okay? And now it's time to skip, to go through this teardrop, this round, and this teardrop, okay? Okay, we're ready to build our ring of 6. Coming out of a teardrop, so we have to add a round, and then a teardrop. Ooh. So again, if this is a ring of 6, it does seem that the best bead to go into is this round bead right here. Then go through that teardrop, slowly pull, pull more, go through this yellow, go through this red, this teardrop, like that. Now, our next ring is a ring of 5. Give it a firm base by going through this bead, add 3 beads, complete the ring of 5 by going through that bead. Okay, so our ring of 5 is in place, and now it's time to skip. Go through teardrop, round, teardrop, pull. Okay, and great, we've got our 2 teardrops and our ring of 5 above them. So that tells us we're in the right place. We're coming out of a teardrop, so we add a round, and then, oops, and then a teardrop. We want to create a ring of 6. We already know we should go through this one, and that one, and this one, and that one, to get into position to add the next ring, which has 5 round beads. See what a nice dome shape we're coming up with here? All of our teardrops are facing outwards. That's great. Only a few rings left to add. In this row, this is a ring of 5. It's getting to be a piece of cake, right? It's pretty easy. This is a little bit of a loose structure, but you know, that's all right. We will tighten it up when it comes time to reinforce. All right, now we know that we just added a ring of 5. Now we want to build a ring of 6, so it's time to skip. Go through teardrop, round, teardrop, pull. All right, see that beautiful ring of 5 above the 2 teardrops. Coming out of a teardrop, must add a round, then add a teardrop. Forming a ring of 6, go through this yellow, teardrop, yellow, teardrop, pull, gently pull a little more. Now we've come to ring 10. It's a ring of 5 round beads. 3 are in place. 1, 2, 3. Got to give this ring a firm base, so we want to go through these 2, add these 2, string them down the thread, and we want to handle our Frida really gently at this point. Until it's reinforced, we want to handle it really gently. And even then, if this structure gets stepped on, it's going to break. All right. Sometimes even if it gets dropped, a teardrop can come off. All right, so all we have to do is create our ring of 5 here by stitching through these beads. Okay. So to get into position to create row 5, we're going to stitch through this teardrop and this round. Okay. All right, so then see what a beautiful pattern is formed on the bottom. You'll know that you've done row 4 correctly if you see an alternation between 2 round beads, 1 teardrop, 2 round, 1 teardrop, 2, etc., etc. This is the way to make sure that you've added row 4 correctly. All right, and you will be coming out of, you'll be splitting a pair of round beads when you begin to add row 5. You're always going to be splitting a pair of round beads. Okay, so that's it for row 4. Now I'm out of thread here, so what I'm going to do is stitch back through a number of beads. It doesn't really matter which beads you go through. I'm going to, here we've looped around a teardrop, which is good for you to see because it happens, okay? I am just going to keep going through beads, probably one by one, so I don't break any, until I feel that the thread is secure. When I feel it's secure, I'm going to, snip the thread, okay? So it's getting secure, but I want it really secure, but I don't want it unraveling, okay? So maybe a few more I'll go through. I'll go through this teardrop, okay? And this round, like that, anywhere at all right? And then in another minute, I will snip that thread. Okay, we're done with row 4, and I will see you back at row 5. Row 5. Now row 5 has 5 rings of 6 beads. It looks just like row 2. Remember row 2? It was 5 rings of 6 beads built around a ring of 5. In the case of row 5, first we're going to build the 5 rings of 6 beads, and row 6 will turn into our ring of 5. Okay? The neat thing about row 5 is that you've got these 5 pairs of round beads here. Pair 1, pair 2, pair 3, pair 4, pair 5. And always when we add rings in row 5, we split a pair of beads. We start by going up through one of the pair of beads to add our ring, okay? And you'll see what I mean, but always look for the pairs. Orient yourself by the pairs of round beads here, okay? Now, Shannon has developed this idea, which is brilliant, that if you use a barbecue skewer, you can hold down your Frida while you're working to add row 5. Now, you don't seem to need the barbecue skewer before row 5. It's row 5 where it's easier to lose track. If you have a soft work surface like a rubber mat or some foam, you can use the point of the barbecue skewer to press down your Frida. If you have a hard surface like I do, you can use the flat end. You press it down like this and you hold it in place so it can't move while you're working, okay? And this may make life a lot easier. Now, because I'm going to be picking up my Frida to show you what it looks like from the side as we add our rings of 6 in row 5, I'm not going to use the skewer, okay? Now I've laid out the beads I need to add in each ring. This is ring 1, ring 2, ring 3, ring 4, and ring 5. This too makes life a lot easier, okay? Since we know that when we run out of beads, we're done with the row, okay? Well, let's get started. See, we're coming up, we're splitting a pair of beads, a pair of round beads. We're coming up out of one of them. Since it's a round, we know we can only add a teardrop, right? And then a round, and then a teardrop. Slide them down. And at this point, we don't even need to play Ask the Beads, but we could. Since this last bead here is a teardrop, and we know it sits next to a round, there's our ring right there. And we know we're creating a ring of 6. In row 5, we're always creating rings of 6 beads, okay? In row 5, we want to work slowly. A lot of these teardrops will want to start falling in, and we pick them up and make them face outward slowly, okay? Now, here we are. We need to get over to this pair of round beads. We need to come up out of this bead here to split the pair. Now, any way that we can navigate there is a fair way. It's nice to do it in the easiest way, the most efficient way, but it doesn't matter as long as you get up and over like this, okay? And now we're in position. See, this is ring 1 of row 5, and we've gotten into position by skipping somewhat across the structure to come up through this round bead here, which splits a pair of beads. Now we're going to add the next beads. We're coming up out of a round, so we could only add a teardrop. And then we add a round, okay? Slide the beads down. Play Ask the Beads if we need to. Now we know we're creating a ring of 6, right? So the yellow has to sit next to this teardrop here, okay? We'll put it through this teardrop bead here, go through the yellow next door to it, and pull slowly. Go through this other teardrop that's also part of the ring. Pull slowly. Okay, and now we've completed that ring. Great. Now where do we need to be next to add the next ring? We need to be coming up out of this bead here. So any way that we can get there is fine. Let's go through this and this. And let's come up out of this. Now the printed instructions may show you differently. This is the easy, intuitive way. I want to teach you both ways. I think you'll find the intuitive way in the end is easier than the printed instructions, which are, after all, 2-dimensional. And they can't show you every nuance or explain every detail the way a video can, okay? Now, we only have 3 rings left to add. Since we're coming up out of a round, we know we're going to add a teardrop next. And then a round. Slide them down, slide them down. We could play Ask the Beads. where do we want to go to form the next ring of 6? Well, we must go into this teardrop bead. So let's do that. And keep pull slowly. Now, great. We've added that ring. Now we want to navigate, skip over to where we can split this pair of round beads, to where we can be coming up out of that bead. How are we going to get there? Any way we can, okay? By going through beads, not across open spaces. And here we are. Great. So we're in position to add the beads that need to be added for the next ring. Since we're coming out of a round, we can only add a teardrop. And then a round. Slide the beads down. Ask the beads one more time. We're forming a ring of 6. Go through this teardrop. Pull slowly. Go through here. And let's just check out the landscape here. I want to show you what to do. Now we only have one bead left, right? This bead has to form, when we add this bead, it has to form one ring of 6 beads, okay? Now a yellow always sits next to what? A round always has to sit next to a teardrop. So to add a round, we have to be coming up out of a teardrop, right? Let's navigate over here and come up out of this teardrop. Okay, and now let's take a really close look. Where do we have to be to add this yellow bead to create a ring of 6? And so this is like a puzzle. And just ask yourself, where would you have to be? I mean, it kind of looks like this has to go in here, doesn't it? To create a ring of 6, because here we have 3 teardrops and we need to have 3 round beads, right? So what is our destination? Our destination is to come out of this teardrop bead here. Let's navigate there. Slowly. All right. Let's pull a little bit, okay? Let's put this round bead onto our needle, knowing we have to add the last ring of 6 beads in row 5 to create a ring of 6. Where do we go? Well, we know that a round bead connects 2 teardrops in a ring of 6, right? So it seems to me we can only go through this teardrop here. Pull slowly. And look, we have indeed created, a ring of 6 beads, okay? All right, this is pretty fabulous. All we have to do now is close up this ring. Just next door to it, there is a ring of 5 beads that becomes row 6, okay? And we might as well just do that in this video, right? Instead of making that a separate video. But first, let's close up this ring. This is our last ring of 6 beads in row 5. We're going to get it closed. We're going to pull. At this point, you know, I would take my barbecue skewer and I would stick it through this row 6, this ring of 5 beads here. And I would gently rotate my Frida to make sure that no teardrops have fallen inside. And I'd put that down. And I would say, okay, have I finished, really finished stitching through this last ring of 6? And the answer is yes. So now we're moving on to row 6 here. Row 6 requires no beads to be added at all. They're all in place. Row 6 is just like row 1. Remember row 1? Row 1 was a ring of 5 beads. That's it. In row 6, those 5 beads are already in place. So all we have to do is stitch through them. Okay. Let's do that slowly and carefully, making sure no teardrop falls inside and that we don't break a bead at this point, and that our thread doesn't catch around a teardrop. This is why I'm going slowly in this last step. Okay, now have I gone through every bead? Yeah. All right, so now your Frida is built. All right, all that remains is reinforcing. It's a beautiful structure. See, it's really kind of fragile and squishy at this point, but as we reinforce it, it'll still be fragile, but it'll be a little bit less fragile and it'll be firmer. Okay, so we'll do that in the next video. Reinforcing. Now there's no right or wrong way to reinforce a Frida. The only right way is the slow and careful way, where we're navigating from bead to bead. I'm definitely using a size 12 needle here, and I'm going to pull slowly as often as I can. You know, I want to go through 2 beads instead of 1 to speed up the process. But that doesn't happen too often because of the angles of the beads. Maybe you'll have more luck with that. So I'm just going to start going through from bead to bead. And my strategy is just to keep stitching around the Frida. You can stitch around each row, each ring, and each row. But I think my best guess is that the most even reinforcing comes from reinforcing randomly. Now, if you find a really good way to do this, please let me know. I'd love to know, and I'll credit you, because there might be an ideal way to reinforce a Frida. What I really want here is even tension that's well distributed across the structure so that it's even. And that's why I think that reinforcing randomly across the structure in different parts of the structure might be the best way to go. But I am always open to learning and to hearing about better ways to build these structures. So please let me know. So, you know, it's going to take, I don't know, a few minutes to reinforce. It just depends on how large your beads are, how full of thread they are, whether it's a good beading day or a bad beading day, and how your needle holds up, right? Because as we know, size 12 needles, they want to break sometimes. If the needle breaks, that's going to make it take a bit longer. You know, ultimately, we are going to come across a bead here that's so full of thread that we can't even go through it one more time. And so when that happens, there I was able to go through 2 beads. I want to show you what to do. You may already know, but I'll show you anyway. Let's go through this bead. And again, see, I'm moving randomly over the structure, around the structure. Let's try to go through this teardrop. Very often, the teardrops, the 4x6 teardrops seem to be the first to fill up. Let's go through this bead. Go through this bead. Now here's where, if you want to have some distraction like a TV, or you can probably pause for a text message during this. This is not the critical part of making the Frida, building the structure. So distractions are okay at this point. So we've got 90 beads in this Frida, right? So we've probably gone through each bead once or twice, just by building the structure, maybe more, I don't know. And at this point, we're adding even more passes of thread, but 90 beads is a lot. So this is going to take time. We don't want to be in a rush. I want to kind of get into the flow of it. And before long, we will meet a bead that doesn't want any more, excuse me, doesn't want any more thread going through it. Right, here's a teardrop. It's, you know, I'm trying to put this size 12 needle through it. I'll try from a different angle. Okay, we can probably do it, but if I get resistance when I'm trying to go through, okay, we're okay. Our worst fear is that we break a bead at this point in time after we've already worked so hard to get our Frida together. So we're going to be really careful not to do that. And yeah, the teardrops seem to be filling up first. So we're making good progress here, going pretty quickly. Okay, yeah, I'm a little bit dubious. Now there, we're okay. The main thing is just go slowly and work deliberately. Being aware of the fact that you might break a bead. It's like many years ago when I used to go rollerblading. I found that if I had it in my mind that I might fall, then I wouldn't fall, right? But if I didn't take a second and think that, okay, I could fall, almost every single time I would fall. So it's just the moment of thinking, of being aware, of awareness that a bead could break. That helps us to remember to go carefully, okay? Okay, so, you know, this teardrop, I'm a little bit, I don't really want to go through it. I'm worried that it's going to break. So what am I going to do? Here's a really easy trick. Put the needle, circle the thread around the thread that connects the teardrop bead to the next bead, to the bead next door. It's just a ring of thread. And then go through the bead next door, okay? So we avoided that teardrop bead altogether. It's got enough thread in it. Let's see if we can go through this one. Yeah, we can. Go through this one. There we go. Yeah, that teardrop also looks kind of full. We'll try. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to go through this teardrop. Let me show you another trick that tends to work. You can skip this teardrop altogether. Go under it. Leave a trail of thread below that teardrop. Okay, stitch under it. Whoops. And pull gently. And then just keep going like normal. Go through this round bead, assuming it will let us. Okay. So those are my two main tricks for bypassing beads that are already too full of thread. Okay. So you just keep going and going and going. You can see this area, since it's bending in, it really needs some attention. It really needs some reinforcing. And I reinforce until I can't get the needle through hardly any beads at all. Another thing you can do, a third option, is if you're really, really stuck and you can't navigate anywhere, you can snip the thread here and add on a whole new thread, right, in a different part of the structure, thereby bypassing that batch of beads, that grouping of beads that's already too full of thread. All right, let's go through this one. So those are 3 tricks for bypassing beads that are already too full of thread. All right, and you just keep going and going and going until your structure, your Frida, is completely reinforced. Okay, now I'm running out of thread here, and you will too. So all you do is add on, snip this thread off and add on a new thread, again using a size 12 needle, or zap it, whichever. Anyway, here's where we are after maybe, was it 10 minutes of reinforcing, something like that. Okay, we're looking pretty good. I'd say we have another 10 to 20 minutes of reinforcing to go. Okay, but we're almost there. We're almost done.